This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Happy July 4th weekend and welcome to this week's edition of Talk Business and Politics. I'm Roby Brock. The U.S. Supreme Court had a busy end to its most recent session, handing down several landmark decisions with huge business and political ramifications. Our roundtable guests are here to help us decipher what's next. We have Talk Business and Politics Michael Cook, KATV's lead capital reporter Janelle, Lilley, and Talk Business and Politics contributor John Burris. Thank y'all all for being here.
Thank you.
Happy July 4th weekend to you. Hope y'all are having a good, relaxing one.
Definitely.
You're not wearing a tie, you are, so you're obviously not having as relaxing of one as possible.
I always dress up for you.
All right, let's talk about what went on at the nation's high court this last basically 2 weeks. It's just been kind of one huge decision after another. Let's start with healthcare first. They ruled basically that the subsidies for the folks in the health insurance exchange is constitutional, kind of puts to rest this whole question about that in that respect. What clarity, John Burris, does it give the Arkansas legislature?
A little bit, because we know what's not going away. There's multiple facets to Obamacare. We knew that things like Medicare cuts and federal tax increases were here to stay. The lawsuit King Burwell challenged the individual mandate and the subsidies flowing through the federal exchange, which Arkansas currently has. So we know that basically all parts are here to stay for now. Now the legislature will have to decide what's best for Arkansas in terms of how you deliver those subsidies via the exchange. Is it a state exchange, which we're on the path to do, or is it continuation through the federal model? I think that's the debate you're going to see, and there's merits to both sides, and we'll see those vetted out over the next few months.
Janelle, what do you? And obviously they're undertaking some of that with the Health Reform Task Force and some other committees up there.
I think what it really did is just left all the pieces on the table. For a while, every time there was any kind of discussion about what we do with the Health Care Task Force and moving forward, it was like, well, the court hasn't ruled on this, so it's like planning with a moving piece, a piece that you don't exactly know if it's going to fit into the puzzle or not. Now we know that it can fit into the puzzle if that's the puzzle you want to be working on. If it's not, get a new puzzle. And so that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting from the committee right now. Now they have all of their pieces. They can just decide how they want to go forward. There's no more of this uncertainty as to whether or not they're even going to have this as an option.
Yeah, Michael Cook, does this take this portion of the healthcare debate off of the political hit list that Democrats have been waylaid with over the last couple of years?
I think at a certain point within the next 5 or 10 years, Republicans will start calling it the Affordable Care Act instead of Obamacare. I mean, they'll pretend like Obama didn't do it. I think the good thing about this for the nation is that you get a sense of, can we finally move on? I know the Republicans in the House have voted something like 50, 60 times to repeal Obamacare. They don't like it, fine. But at a certain point now, it's here to stay. I mean, 2 Supreme Court challenges, it survived both of them. As President Obama put, it's now a part of our moral fabric. It's part of our country now. And so there's obviously tweaks and things that can be done to improve it, and we all obviously need to do that. But it's here to stay, and it's actually a good thing for America.
It has been here for 5 years, yet it is still it is the easiest target for Republicans to use in terms of framing up people's anger and angst in that respect. Do either one of you see this turning up in next year's elections?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say as a conservative, I mean, it's a defining issue because it's a defining topic and it affects every American's life. And in a lot of ways, I feel like some of the lawsuits have been, or at least some of the rhetoric, and particularly this lawsuit, even if on the merits it would have been good if it succeeded, it was always kind of a grand slam. I mean, it'd be like me deciding to go run up Pinnacle Mountain tomorrow because I thought I needed to exercise. I mean, you can start with smaller things, and I feel like this was a little bit of everybody pinned their hopes and dreams to it, but the chances of success were always relatively low, and I mean, that's why you saw a 6-3 decision. And so hopefully there are still lots of things to talk about why Obamacare is bad, and those things aren't going to go away. The question can now become, how does Arkansas best deal with the consequences of the bad law while still focusing on the fact that it was a bad law that that in a lot of ways has caused problems on a state and on an individual level.
I hate to put the law student on the spot here, but I mean, do you see other legal challenges coming on this?
I mean,
or was this the best one that
I
they
feel
may
like
have?
there will be other legal challenges. I just really don't see the court taking another one, though. I mean, the Supreme Court has the luxury of picking and choosing which cases it wants to hear, and I just cannot imagine with a 6-3 decision. That's a very firm number. I can't imagine them taking on anything else. You might challenge it and go through appellates, but I can't imagine the court taking it.
All right, let's talk about another big court ruling this past week and a half, and that was on same-sex marriage. Came down a week ago Friday. Basically, it's constitutional. All states have to acknowledge and accept same-sex marriage now. What do Republicans and Democrats do with this political football, Michael?
It's in some ways it makes it easier for everybody to a certain extent, because whether you're for same-sex marriage or against it, it's now been decided by the highest court in the land. It's here to stay unless there's a constitutional amendment, which is not going to happen. It's the law of the land. So in some ways, whether you're for it or against it, you can say the Supreme Court's ruled, whether I agree or don't agree, here's where it is. I think we'll have upcoming debates in terms of so-called religious freedom, the classic Republican tropes of does a wedding photographer have to work a same-sex marriage and so on and so forth. That'll probably be the next debate. But at the end of the day, all Americans are equal now under the law. Yeah,
you see more legislation at the local level?
I think honestly, I think it gives people a scapegoat. In one of my favorite movies, there's a line that says there's always someone higher up where you can pass the buck. And I feel like that's where this ends. You have some Republicans who maybe didn't want to pick this, cross up and carry it anymore. And they are now thinking to themselves, well, I can just blame everything on judicial activism and a Supreme Court and that darn Justice Kennedy, and not have to really deal with it in my own community anymore. You have a scapegoat, and so it does. And for those who firmly believe against it, then they have a rallying cry, and for the Democrats, you have a victory. So like in all cases, I feel like you at least have some kind of way that you can maneuver this into a win for you or a potential rallying cry for you.
Yeah. What do you think in the legislature? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, in the short term, speaking politically, in the short term, it's undoubtedly a benefit to Republicans. Long term, I'll let people who think they're smart enough to analyze long-term trajectories, analyze that. But short term, I think Janelle's exactly right. I mean, we have a constitutional amendment here that most Arkansans supported, and the federal court overturned that, and you saw a lot of Democrats happy about it, but it doesn't change the fact that most Arkansans disagree. The legislature, I mean, I wouldn't predict that either. I think realistically there's not a lot to do. The more you see,
that doesn't mean they won't try.
Well, it doesn't, but frankly, there wasn't a lot that the city of Little Rock could do about it either. But they still felt it was appropriate for them to place a rainbow on a public structure, celebrating the decision in a political way.
I knew you were going to work that in.
Well,
it's celebrating the right for people to marry. I mean, I think that's a great thing that they did. Nothing wrong with the equality.
It was a political statement with taxpayer dollars. If the legislature wants to make one back, I think they'd be justified.
All right, maybe the state capitol could be painted half in rainbow and half not in rainbow.
I think the bigger thing, though, John was talking about Arkansas, but you look at nationwide, CNN did a poll right after this, and 59% of Americans support the Supreme Court ruling. I mean, the world has changed, the culture has changed nationwide.
Doesn't necessarily.
But yeah, I'm saying nationwide. In terms of Arkansas, is always a little bit different. But in terms of how it's amazing how it seems like the Democrats have won the culture war nationwide in terms of Americans now support same-sex marriage, other major pieces of the culture war.
Liberals are winning. Rainbows are up on public buildings. 10 Commandments are
coming down.
I think
Americans are winning is a better way to put it. But people now have the freedom to do what everybody else does.
Let him finish his thought.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's just, I think when people look at the debate and the politicization of this debate by public figures, while 10 Commandments are being pulled down off of Capitol grounds across the country, whether or not they're related, whether or not it's apples and apples, I think it frustrates people, and I think they're right. And the one thing that's certain is in Arkansas, that's a good thing for Republicans.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we're going to return for a little bit more on one final Supreme Court decision dealing with the death penalty. I'm with our political roundtable. I got John Burris, Janelle Lilley, Michael Cook. I'm Roby Brock, and we are back after this.
Spending time with family is an Arkansas tradition. It defines who we are and sets us apart. It's being close, feeling trust when you need it most. First Security knows the importance of family because we've been family-owned since the day we began. It's just one more reason why banking with us is better. First Security Bank, only in Arkansas.
Welcome back to our roundtable discussion. I'm with John Burris and Michael Cook from Talk Business and Politics, KATV's lead Capitol reporter, Janelle Lilley. All right, we've been talking about two major U.S. Supreme Court decisions of the last 2 weeks. Let's move to a third one here on the death penalty. Basically, the nation's high court says that the chemical composition for these lethal injections is okay to move forward on in the state of Oklahoma. It has repercussions for other states as well. How soon before we start seeing executions in the state of Arkansas, Janelle?
I mean, it depends on how quickly Arkansas can get its hands on the drugs as well. That's the other part of the equation here. Just because they have the ability to perform an execution legally doesn't mean that we necessarily have the supplies in order to make that happen. I think it was a very interesting decision. Justice Alito was very strongly worded in it, and what was fascinating to me about the decision, it just seemed more criticism of those against the death penalty, and basically in a lot of the reviews that I read about it, taking it down one cut at a time rather than really challenging on its face. And really there's not much going forward after this. I think the Supreme Court's had their last say.
Well, does it renew the death penalty debate in the state of Arkansas now? We've seen a body of evidence over a period of years where some people who have been unjustly convicted have been proven innocent after their death. Mm-hmm. Representative Petty has tried to bring some things up to look at other forms of state executions, but is it time for Arkansas to revisit whether or not the death penalty is cost effective, whether or not it is fair?
That is a tough question. I support the death penalty, but you still worry that, as a country we have, executed innocent people. How many we can debate, but unfortunately it has happened. That's something we have to struggle with at a society that sometimes we might get it wrong. Another thing I would say about the drugs themselves, I think it's important that Americans and Arkansans get to know where the drugs came from. I know some states have passed laws where you couldn't know where the drugs. Arkansas, yeah, exactly. Arkansas being one of them. I don't think that's right. I think at the end of the day you should have transparency and know where these drugs are coming from. But that's
your take, John.
Well, I agree with all the summary. We have a lot of problems. I view the death penalty as more of an intellectual debate, and I don't mean that in a crass way. I support it. We have bigger problems in our criminal justice system. Once we have everybody in jail and our parole system fixed, be happy to go get a cup of coffee and talk about whether or not we should revisit this.
You think the death penalty is trivial compared to the other prison problems?
I think that as far as what poses a greater threat to public safety and innocent people en masse, it's the way we're handling our criminal justice system today in Arkansas. And I think when we're having discussions on criminal justice, you should probably be focused on how we keep bad people in jail.
Your Twitter feed's about to blow up.
And to answer your original question, though, it was a debate, and I think it will once again be a debate in the legislature. They brought it up this past year. Should we even have a death penalty? Which for some was very shocking. We weren't necessarily expecting that in January out of our legislature this past year. And at least it was a discussion that didn't get very far, but it was one that they at least began.
Yeah. Well, I think that it'll come up again. My personal opinion is I think we will see at least some stronger conversation in that respect now that a little bit of that is cleared out, particularly if executions resume. And we haven't had one in 10 years in the state of Arkansas.
Nebraska outlaw executions, am I remember correctly?
I can't remember which.
I think that conservative state outlawed and overrode the Republican governor. This is a Republican legislature, so it is a debate that we should have from time to time.
In the conversations that I've had with Governor Hutchinson about it, and those are very limited, but every time that he's brought it up, he really does believe that, it's the law of Arkansas, and as his job as an executive, it's his job to enforce it.
Former federal prosecutor, too. All right,
Absolutely.
John Burris, Janelle Lilley, Michael Cook, thank you very much. Good stuff.